Alright. I wanted to get straight into it because this is the official Handbook of the Marvel Universe 89 update. One of the smallest omnibuses Marvel have done in a while. I didn't mind that. I am not complaining. I am a champion of the smaller ones. I would much prefer them to do an omnibus of a 12-issue run than an omnibus of 48 bulk dumped issues with no care or consideration for the stories or the quality of reading experience. Let's get it out of the plastic. I want to complain about the cover, but I won't. Only 8 issues in this. They were 66-page issues. I think it was 66 pages anyway. This is a sequel to the deluxe edition of the Marvel Handbooks, and it is meant to go hand in hand with that, providing updates for new characters and characters with significant changes, and even a couple of profiles like Bullseye Man that they managed to forget to do last time around. There are a lot of problems with these, but overall they are fine. Nothing that ruins the legacy of my beloved Handbooks. Let's take the dust jacket off. We have got a collage underneath. This Hulk art is throwing me off, but this appears to be made up of a bunch of the insets. Captain Comet. It is from Captain Comet's profile, the Hulk picture. Yeah, these are all art used to show character powers and things like that. I said I wasn't going to complain about the cover to the omnibus, because these issues, their individual covers, they didn't lend themselves well to the cover for an omnibus. Well, they could have done something like this. This should be the cover, not a title page. Marky Mark G is far less involved with these ones. These are mainly the work of Peter Sanderson, who had worked with Marky Mark on the last 2 Handbook volumes. Without Marky Mark as involved, one thing you will notice is that there is in the past, on a profile, sometimes there would be original information tying something together, like explaining how X character repaired their armor off panel, and this is very, very big in the original 83 series, entire origin stories for characters. But one of the biggest problems is that this update was coming too late. DC were on top of it. They did their Handbook updates annually, but Marvel were lagging behind. It had been 2 entire years since the last issue of a Handbook was published, and 4 years since the last volume began. In 4 years, any major character has undergone something that probably deserves a new entry. The other thing is, by leaving it so late, there is stuff that needs an entry, but then that entry is no longer usable. There were a lot of profiles done for these issues that were completely dropped. This issue has a huge one. There was an entry for Captain America, the John Walters version. That there, on the original cover art, that was him. But in the time it took between compiling this and releasing it, he had retired from being Captain America, so the profile is gone. Since his new identity, U.S.Agent, was fortunately near the back of the alphabet, they were able to rework that for the final issue. There are others, though, that are not so lucky, like Miss Magnets, and I will point them out as we go along. Another thing I will point out, this is a small omnibus, but there is more than enough extra content that they could have included. I am suspecting they haven't. I'd even get the sense most Marvel's omnibuses are receiving much care or attention. I think the legwork required to collate all the bonus content is more than they are willing to put towards the production of an omnibus, when some other omnibuses are as easy as just throwing 40 issues of Daredevil into one hardback volume and calling it a collection. I have a list of things they could have included, and we will either be seeing some of them or none of them. Right, so our update includes new characters like Armageddon, and there have been changes. A lot of the characters no longer have the coloured backgrounds. A little thing that, but it's immediately noticeable. We get individual profiles for characters who in the last volumes were relegated to small entries within a team. Characters like Wingman who have undergone massive changes. A big thing is that they are now covering civilian characters. In the past, the only civilian characters they gave entries were ones who temporarily had some form of powers for a time. I'm talking the likes of Dickie Jones or General Happerblap from Hulk. Even like Alfred, he didn't have a profile in the other ones. There is Major Victory from the New Warriors before he joined the New Warriors. That is the cover to Marvel 2 for 1, 69. Really like that cover. No, wait, it isn't. That is interior art from Marvel 2 for 1, 69. Really should have been the cover. Here is another civilian, and one I think they may be overlooked in the old volumes because she did, for a time, have powers. There is Bucky. There's a page that has been retconned heavily. Everybody's favourite member of the Excellent Men. I need to look at more of those issues. I started it and then I didn't finish it. We see a lot of the 90s artists in here. Todd McFarlane, Robert Liefeldman, Brie Larson's granddad. In fact, to go back to Armageddon, I think that is Robert Liefeldman art there. There's a profile for Wesley Snipes. And there is Captain Cold from, yes, New Thunderbells. Time Bomb. And yes, it actually does list Time Bomb under other aliases. So I will explain this. In her first appearance in Secret Wars II issue 5, there is a typo where she uses her powers and then she's meant to say, I call them time bombs. But the typo makes it sound like she's saying, I call myself Time Bomb. Fuck it, let's just get the bastard out. Here, she is shown beyond a man her powers, and you can tell from the text before it that she is explaining her powers. But that is a typo. She's meant to say that she calls them time bombs, but she says, I call myself Time Bomb. Which makes no sense because before that we've already covered what she is called. There is Box. Where do they get their crazy names? 3-page entry for Box. Probably needed that many pages to explain where he gets his crazy name from. Yeah, Bullseye Man, they forgot to include in the 1985 edition. There's one of my favourite generic Marvel Universe grunts, Bushwhacker Bob. Doesn't list the Paraders underneath his group affiliation. When he was introduced, he was working for the Paraders as an assassin. He was ganning around and killing muties, which is why Wolfman started hunting him. Captain Britain. We still have what I consider to be a fairly racist implementation of listing his first American appearance as if his first appearance in a British comic isn't legit. Ugh, he's a character that I hate. Oh, and here's some more characters that I hate. I think this was another one that they forgot to do in the 85 edition, but this profile is infamous for having loads of incorrect data. Firefist, R.I.P. Firefist, Captain Comet, and there is that picture of Hulk. Sexy woman in a skirt with a bunch of unsexy men. And there is the sexy woman in a skirt all by herself. Here are two things I hate. Christopher Clairvoyant, strip mining Albert Moore's Captain Britain run, and Christopher Clairvoyant trying to be whimsical. I think I completely forgot this profile was a thing. This is Fire Spirit, depowered Fire Spirit. She would get her powers back a few years after this. We get a Defenders entry here, although it's listed as Defenders/Dragon Circle. It should make you laugh because the Dragon Circle equated to nothing. I don't think the Dragon Circle came up once after this entry. The Defenders didn't get an entry in the 1985 series for some reason. But this still makes a mistake of not listing Luke Cage's as a member. It's Dennis Demolition, the Avenger that everyone forgets. Group affiliation says unofficial member of the Avengers. I don't know what makes it unofficial. Destroyer droids. I love me some Destroyer droids. Something I should say is that there are some characters absolutely missing from here. As far as updates gone, Miss McDonald's not being covered in this is absurd. In the 3 years since Miss McDonald's last entry, she had joined Fantastic Force, she had transformed into a rock monster, and was as much as unrecognisable. She isn't covered in here, and due to how much stuff was supposedly dropped, I wouldn't be shocked to learn they ditched her because they had to include some shite new bad guy who never appeared again. Kazar could probably do with a new entry too. Excalibur and the Fallen Angles. Here's another one that I would put on the list of things they forgot to do in the older ones. Here is Casper, future member of the Thunderbals. There is some Todd McFarlane art, and I've said before, not a fan of how he draws Hulk. Another sexy woman in a skirt. And there is Iron Fist, a character who weirdly has spent the time since the last Andy books dead. I don't know why that requires an update, especially considering they're not even depicting him in his red costume. Iron Man pretty much needs an update every time he gets a new armour. Alfred, he finally gets a profile. One of the things I'll be seeing if they include is there was a different version of this profile in Avengers 300, as well as an updated Avengers profile. Julie Lee got a profile, and this is before she really became a character. However, I never noticed before that that costume is a mixed match of excellent men costumes. She has Taylor Swift's top, Storm's jacket, Rouge's bottom off, Mullet Man's purse and belt, and arguably Wolfman's hairdresser. There's the most boring woman in Scotland. This cover, that woman there, that was originally Miss Magnet's. She was meant to have a profile in this, but it got scrapped because she was depowered. However, we do get to see a little bit of her in this entry for the paraders. I am going to have to start skipping through a lot of this because this is dragging on. But there is my granddaddy, Morgan from Excalibur, Sinestro. I will be mentioning this again at the end. There is a character not good enough to be played by Deborah Ann Wall. I don't think the guy still watches me videos, but there used to be one viewer who was, I would say, obsessed with this character. Fetish Fuel, before she became full-on Fetish Fuel. See, this is a sort of profile that is a bit pointless because unbeknownst to the people working on this book, she would have an even bigger change a few months after it came out. I also forgot the Ravers had an entry. Look at Spinkter, Andy Richter, Rintra, another sexy woman, Scalp Man, a surprisingly sexy woman who has incest with her stepbrother. We've got an entry for the Serpent League of America and ARF profiles for the new characters introduced in Captain America 338? 37, off by one. Here is issue 7. As YouTube's leading channel on SeaWorld Attacks, here is the Serpent God. We get stuff from SeaWorld Attacks covered in this entry. And there is Seth, the bad guy with the greatest name ever. Speedy Balls. I'm not even going to start. I'm not going to start. I'm not going to start. The Supreme Soviets from that Captain America story that we just looked at. I forgot to say both Phantasma and Vostok had different names originally. Did Nazi B-Man really not get an entry in the original Andy books? Maybe he got one in the 83 one and they didn't do him a new one for the 85 one because he hadn't appeared since. Nazi B-Man is great. This is what comics should be about. Ideas like Nazi B-Men, not anti-Semitic stereotypes inserted into comics by Steve Engeltine. Thyroid Mary, we have gotten a lot of sexy women in this update. And here is our final issue, issue 8. And judging from what's left, it's looking like we might have a decent amount of bonuses. Man, there is that U.S.Agent entry, reworking a lot of stuff from the scrapped Captain America entry. Venom, unfortunately with art by Brie Larson's granddad. You know what? I might quickly do a top 10 sexiest women who received profiles in the official Andy book of the Marvel Universe, Update 89. In the number 10 spot, Thyroid Mary. Number 9, Infectious. Number 8, a surprisingly low entry for Mary James because of Brie Larson's granddad's art. Number 7, Dakota Johnson. Number 6, T'Pau. Number 5, Smurf's sister that he bangs. 4, Vertical. Number 3 is Sexy Woman in a Skirt. 2 is the Oz twin sister. And number 1 is Budget Emma Frosties. Emma Frosted Flakes. The Vision here presents another potential problem with this update. He was very clearly rushed in. This was a change that happened very recently, and something was probably dropped to quickly insert Vision into it. This is a silly way to approach an update because there isn't that much info available on what happened with the Vision yet. A month later, Jason Bourne could have established something that totally invalidates this profile. What would have been wiser would be to stick to your guns. Do the Captain America profile. Do the Miss Magnets one. They're out of date, sure, but those were changes that had been big alterations to characters during the 2 years between Andy books. White Vision could have lasted for only a few issues after this. U.S.Agent could have been rechristened something else in the time between scrapping his original profile and publishing the retooled version. I guess what I'm saying is a better approach might have been to do an 89 update at the end of 1989 and cover the new stuff from 89 rather than trying to keep up to date with stuff happening currently. I'm not explaining very well what I mean. They had a lot of ground to cover here, and the mistake was they didn't approach it as a catch-up, but as something that adapts to changes rather than updating things. I'm still not describing it well. I know exactly what I mean, but I can't word it right. Can someone try and explain what I mean down below? Basically, do Marvel 1989. Have it contain all the stuff relevant to 1989. Didn't care if in December 1989 X character lost their powers, because they had them for most of 1989. Actually, maybe this is better. Just have a cut-off point. When production began, say that is our cut-off point. It might be a bit off or out of date, but we have 2 to 4 years to cover here, and that takes priority over sudden changes that invalidate acknowledging stuff from those 2 to 4 years. Now this is the final entry, and I am going to spend a lot of time on it. They single this out as the updates offering for the Book of the Dead. It is the only one, the only profile, and there is plenty of other characters that they could have included in a Book of the Dead. Here is my belief. This wasn't intended to ever have a Book of the Dead section. This character died in the middle of production of the Andy books, and they just shifted her profile to the back to cover their bases without considering that there are other profiles in these issues that freely mention that the character covered has since died. Sinestro, for example, he died in the same story as her. Even the profile for a character just before hers is another one that could be included in the Book of the Dead. But no, I think there's something else going on here. Notice that they didn't depict her correctly. She should be in her bondage queen outfit that she was wearing at the time she died. My full belief is this. They did this profile, then the character got powers and became a bondage queen. So they dropped the profile rather than totally rework it or get new art. Then, over the course of this Andy book series, she died. So they dusted off this scrapped profile, stuck it at the end, and added new information to explain what happened to her without ever having the time to commission new art of her as the sexy Black Queen. And this is our amount of bonuses. I am hopeful now. The larger Alfred profile from Avengers 300, I mentioned that already. And I mentioned these in my unboxing of the last omnibus. These are the new profiles for the paperbacks they did of the deluxe edition. I'm getting me hopes up that we might cover everything that I have on my list. Definitely satisfying to see that they did put that little bit of extra effort into this omnibus. Here's one that I thought they were going to miss. Damage Control had off-page profiles at the back of each issue for its characters. This is from Avengers 350, and I thought they would definitely have missed this. That's from Avengers 300. Captain America Annual 11. I was expecting them to miss that as well. We got a few profiles at the back of that annual. And this is one I definitely was convinced they were going to miss out. This is from Captain America 425 from 1994. I thought there was no chance that they would remember this. A Fantastic Force one that you've got to turn on the side, which I love doing. Punisher share, I didn't know about this. I didn't have anything to do with the Punisher on my list of potential bonuses. If it turns out the rest of the pages are just those fucking pin-ups of guns, I'm going to be fucking furious. Iron Man Annual 9. They have done a good job here. Well done. They're getting quite far into the 90s as well with some of these. And this was a big one. They had profiles in the last batch of issues of the new Universe titles. There's about 30 profiles for these characters. And since it was Marky Mark doing Dup 7, we get loads of profiles for Dup 7 characters. And Dup 7 is the only thing worth reading in the new Universe. I wonder if any of these bonus entries would seep their way into the top 10 sexiest women. I didn't think so. I skipped over some of the new Universe stuff, and now we're back to the changes made in the paperbacks. They altered Wingman's costume to be his Extra Factor's costume. Smurf had gone back to being a human, so they totally changed his art. They corrected Cyclist's art because his costume was wrongly done. It was a version of the costume that he never wore. I think they just changed Hawkeye's picture because the picture of Hawkeye in the deluxe edition didn't follow Marky Mark's guidelines. The cat had unretired, so they just swapped the pictures around. That picture there on the right was what the main profile picture was in the deluxe edition. Same thing done with Satan's Son, but the interesting thing here is how much they have managed to change the art to be his then current costume. No Man got a new bit of art with his new design. Hank Gordon, he got a new bit of art, and they changed Wonder Man's art so that it was not his Christmas tree costume. There's the original cover art with John Walter's Captain America. There was an issue of Marvel Age that just had this little bit about the Andy books, and it had this art with Miss Magnets from the scrapped profile. The thing is, I love this bit of art. This is, I try not to say hyperbolic statements like this, but this is my favourite bit of artwork ever done for a Marvel Andy book profile picture. And had they actually used it, it would have been #1 on the sexy list. And there is some art. And the only thing that they haven't included from my list is the profile for John Walter's Captain America. Good effort. Well done to everyone involved. The question remains, what is next for Marvel Andy books? I'm sure they are going to do an omnibus of the Master Edition from the 90s. They, however, are incredibly different and not quite what you're hoping for. When they do collect that, they should rearrange it alphabetically. They were released as single issues with random characters in them. And I might not even buy the omnibus if they didn't rearrange it. It becomes a bother to find a single profile if it's in the original order, where Spider-Man is in issue 1, but Spider-Woman is in issue 25 or whatever. I would have guessed they would do a Marvel Saga omnibus, but I was surprised they announced a Marvel Age omnibus instead. I'm not sure I will bother with that one. Marvel Age was a magazine, basically Marvel's in-house promo. There's some insights and interesting things in there. Marky Mark had a column. Fred Embeck did comedy strips. You can see interviews with creators or solicitations for comics or stories that never came to pass. But a lot of it is really unappealing, promotional shilling. Back to this. I am glad we managed to get the trilogy of 80s Andy books all in omnibuses. And I was impressed with the bonuses offered in this. 7 thumbs up, easy.